Question number 11, Eugenie Sage.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker, thank you. My question is to the Minister for the Environment and asks, is he satisfied that the Resource Management Act 1991 is protecting rivers and groundwater from pollution? If so, why?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, as I said in my Lincoln lecture last week, the RMA is generally working well in cleaning up point source pollution, the likes of town sewage systems, dairy sheds and factories, but is not working well enough in the area of dealing with diffuse pollution, such as runoff from farms as well as in urban environments. That is why the focus of the government's freshwater reforms, including the National Policy Statement, the stock exclusion rules, the clean-up funds and the implementing good management practice are very much focused on that new challenge around diffuse pollution.
Supplementary question, Eugenie Sage.
Is it acceptable that the Hawke's Bay Regional Council allows intensive feedlots like this with no need for a resource consent and no monitoring, given the amount of pollution that rain can flush into the Tukituki River and groundwater from land uses like this in this style of farming?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, I would caution the member of connecting the difficulties in Havelock North directly with intensive farming, in that actually that area has a far lower level of intensive farming as compared with other areas. And secondly, I'd note the data from GNS.
Order. I apologise.
Mr Speaker, I wasn't attempting to link Havelock North and the gastric outbreak there with this activity. I was simply asking a straight question.
Well, but that's then a debatable matter. The minister's choosing to answer it. Allow the minister to complete the answer.
Mr Speaker, I note with respect to the serious issues around the water supply in Havelock North that the GNS analysis showed that the contaminated water was only 1 year old, was likely to be surface water, in that the aquifer water in that area is 50 years old. That would suggest it's an issue of the integrity of that well, rather than the Green Party trying to use it as an issue without evidence to blame farmers in the area.
Supplementary question, Eugenie Sage.
Will the minister's proposed changes to the National Policy Statement for fresh water require regional councils to properly control intensive stock farming like those feedlots, or will he let intensive agriculture off the hook yet again?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, we're the first government to have a national policy statement putting requirements on regional councils. When we came to government, there was not a single catchment anywhere in New Zealand in which there were any restrictions on intensive farming. Not one. There are now at least 8 where intensive farming is not allowed, and there are a further 15 catchments as a consequence of our national policy statement where they are limiting nutrients from intensive agriculture.
Order. Supplementary question, Eugenie Sage.
Doesn't his government's failure to have strong and effective national policy under the RMA, which regulates land uses like this, allow those who benefit from these land uses to shift the costs onto the community through dirty water, dirty rivers and dirty groundwater?
Mr Speaker,
the Honourable Dr.
I'd ask, where was that member when she was on ECAN and they did nothing? Where was the last Labor government for 9 years that did nothing? I would point to the fact at least we have a national policy statement on fresh water, and that we have a further program with the national regulations around stock exclusion and the tighter rules around nutrients, where we actually are putting national requirements to improve the quality of our fresh water.
Supplementary.
Point of order.
Point of order. Eugenie Sage.
Can I table Rule 6.3.2 from the Hawke's Bay Resource Management Plan dated the 1st of October 2015, which allows the use of land as a permitted activity for feedlots and feed pads?
Order. I'll accept that it may be more difficult than normal for members to obtain that, and therefore I will put the leave. The House will decide. Leave is sought to table that particular document. Is there any objection? There is not. It can be tabled. Question number 12, Stuart Nash.